You referred to something Teddy Roosevelt said about immigration. Well, as you know, we're a nation of immigrants. Immigration has always been a source of strength for our country. Millions and millions of people, many of them poor, many not well educated, have come to our country and become productive and patriotic citizens. The Catholic bishops have long favored a version of comprehensive immigration reform that would combine a generous, welcoming policy for illegal immigrants and humane treatment that doesn't involve mass deportation or separation of families for persons who are not here legally. Do you agree with the bishops or disagree with aspects of their position? How would you handle the immigration issue in general?
Well, certainly I recognize that we are a nation of immigrants. But we also have to be smart. We have to recognize that we don't have the capacity to take care of everybody in the world. If we did, that would be great. But what makes more sense is to create good situations in other parts of the world. For instance, in Cameroon right now, there are American companies over there who are helping to develop millions of acres of incredibly fertile land, producing record crops, reaping enormous benefits for themselves financially, but also improving the infrastructure of that country, creating jobs for people there, and teaching them the mass ag business so that they can carry that on themselves and at the same time making friends for the United States. That makes a lot more sense than trying to bring everybody here. With the Syrian refugees recently, I was over there. I asked them, what is your desire? They said, our desire is to be in our own country. Not a single person said, I want to come to the United States. But, what we have to do is be smart. We do have an obligation. This is a humanitarian crisis. But, the northeast section of Syria, Al-Hasaka province, controlled by the Kurds and the Christians and the Sunnis, are perfect areas the size of Lebanon for the refugees to go. They just need a little support in terms of protection, the International Protection Unit. There are ways to do that. Costs us a lot less money, extremely humanitarian, helps them out. In terms of this country, our southern border is incredibly porous. It's like a highway coming through there. And the real problem, I've been down there recently and talked to the sheriffs, are what they call the OTMs, other than Mexicans. People who are not from Mexico or Central or South America, but are from Sudan and Iraq and Russia. And these people are just infiltrating our country. This is a real problem. We need to shut that border down, and we have the ability to do it. We've done it in Yuma County, Arizona, before the Justice Department came in and disassembled their program. It's easy to do. We just don't have the will to do it. And then you shut off all of the inducements that would make people want to come here. That'll take care of that problem. But you do have the people who have been here for some time, many of whom are outstanding individuals, have contributed. I think we should give them an opportunity to live above ground, not to live under the shadows all the time. And I would give them a window, like 6 months, to get registered. And they could become guest workers in our country to work in specific industries where they are needed, and they are needed. And they would, of course, have to pay taxes and a back tax penalty, but they would no longer have to hide in the shadows. Doesn't make them citizens, doesn't give them the right to vote. If they want those things, they have to go through exactly the same process as anybody else has to go through in order to get that done. But I think that is the fair way and the reasonable way to do it. And bear in mind, for those who say, let's just round them all up and ship them somewhere, I've talked to many farmers in Iowa, South Dakota, and other parts of the country who have multi-thousand acre farms. And they say, we start people out at $11 an hour. We can't hire any Americans, not a single one. And, you want to see something collapse. You round up everybody and send them back. You're going to be paying $15 for a peck of tomatoes. I don't think we want that either.
So if I understand your immigration policy as you've sketched it, Dr. Carson, you would permit the perhaps as many as 10 to 12 million illegal immigrants presently residing in the United States to stay if they met certain conditions of registering, and you would not bar any of them on principle from becoming citizens in future if they take the right steps to normalize their status to prove that they are worthy of being U.S. citizens.
Right. Now we're talking obviously about people who have pristine records. We're not talking about people who have been problematic. Yes.
There's a base in the Republican Party that some candidates are appealing to very strongly that might be inclined to respond to what you've just said by saying Ben Carson's for amnesty. How do you respond to that?
Of course they would. Of course they would say that, and of course they do say that. But there's nothing that I have said that is inconsistent with American principles. We need guest workers. Guest workers want to be here. You fashion the correct type of guest worker program. That's not amnesty. Amnesty would be if we just say, okay, you broke the law and it's okay, and you can become an American citizen. That's very different from what I just described. I talked about something that is pragmatic, that makes sense. And as I've said, the process of becoming an American citizen is not an easy process. And the vast majority of those people probably wouldn't want to go through that process, but they do want to make a living. They want to be able to send money back to their families in Honduras or wherever they are. And they want to be able to do this in a manner where they're not harassed and blackmailed because of their status as people who are here illegally.
It's very, very important to hear you say what you just said, Dr. Carson. Many of the people who are here in the shadows, as we say, are vulnerable to various kinds of ill treatment by persons willing to exploit them. So a policy that helps them to escape those dire circumstances is certainly a humane one. Do you think that more skilled immigrants from other countries are in order for the American economy? Is that another place where a Carson immigration policy would take a new look at things?
Well, again, we have to base our policies on evidence. And, there are areas where we do need people, and bringing them in from other countries can be beneficial to us, but we have to be very careful. Certain types of the H-1B visas and things like that, where we say we don't have enough people in engineering and various areas, so we bring people in from the outside to do these jobs. And then we find out that we have a bunch of people in our country who do in fact have the skills, who are having a hard time getting those jobs because they're competing with foreigners for these jobs, because our companies can hire the foreigners for less than they would have to pay our people. We have to be very careful of that kind of situation, because people will always find a way to manipulate it to their own advantage. But again, it just requires vigilance, and it requires openness and looking at it, being able to listen to everybody and not just one segment to see what they have to say. As the Bible says in the book of Proverbs, if you go out there gung-ho about one thing and you make all your policies based on that, and then you're embarrassed when the other side comes and presents their side of the case. Let's hear everything. Let's be open. When we talk about liberty and justice for all, that's what it actually means. We got to listen to all sides and then make intelligent decisions.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Carson. I'd like to thank you for joining me on Candidate Conversations 2016. We're out of time now. I really appreciate you being with us.
equality, liberty and justice for everybody, treating everybody the same.